And political violence is rare, but not unheard of in the United States.
Yes, President Biden and other leaders call for change. The question is, can Americans set aside their differences for the sake of the country?
And with us tonight is Zev Yaroslavsky, former LA County Supervisor. He's currently the director of the Los Angeles Initiative at UCLA's Luskin School of Public Affairs. Can you hear us right now? I just want to check in.
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for your time. And we want to kick things off by mentioning you do have decades of experience as an elected official. So from your perspective, can you, given the current political landscape and with the election only a few months away now, what's more likely to happen with political tensions as they are in this country? Will they either inflame or will they be toned down as so many current congressional leaders have called for?
Well, I think mostly for the foreseeable future, in the short term, I think the tension should be tamped down, and the rhetoric will be less provocative on all sides of the political spectrum. I mean, both because it's the right thing to do and it's also the politically correct thing to do. The country is shocked by this. We haven't had a former president or presidential candidate have an attempted assassination on him since, I believe, Ronald Reagan, which is over 40 years ago. So this is a shock to the country, and I think that the people expect the leaders of the country, both at the top and all the way down the chain, to try to bring unity together, try to bring people back together to stop the rhetoric that provokes these kinds of things. You know, words matter. When you call people vermin or you say you want to put a bullseye on somebody, there are 380 million people in the United States. It only takes one to do something crazy like this. And so I think people on both sides of the aisle in the last 24 hours have been calling for tamping down the rhetoric. Speaking policy differences is one thing, but demeaning, dehumanizing opponents is another.
Yeah, Zev, going off of that, so much of politics over the last few decades, but particularly in the 21st century, has evolved from policy-focused ideals into identity and politics really reflecting people's emotions and sense of self. How has that evolution really played a role in the political atmosphere we're seeing play out in the U.S. right now?
Well, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. And one thing I do know is it's a very complicated question and a very complicated answer. I think the media has changed. We all used to watch the same television shows every day, every night at home. There were 3 networks. We watched those shows. Now you can watch dozens of different shows, live stream the news. You can watch it on the various private networks. We all silo ourselves, and we're not talking to each other. And I think some of this was exacerbated by the pandemic. I know it has in the educational world where I was in for the last decade. People don't talk to each other the way they used to talk before the pandemic, before we were isolated. And it exacerbated an isolation and a polarization that we've had developing for a long time. And so ideologically, culturally, resentment in some parts of the country that they're not doing as well as other parts of the country. That's why former President Trump talked about his being the retribution. I don't like that political tactic, but he was onto something. People are angry. People feel like they've been had in so many places between the Colorado River and the Hudson River. There's a whole other country out there, and people know it. So I think that all of these things contribute to what we have in this siloed, polarized society that we live in, and it certainly bleeds into politics.
And Zev, one more before we let you go. How do you see this attempted assassination on the former president impacting voters, especially those undecided with the election right around the corner?
Well, it's going to be hard to tell, but you got a little hint on it. Mr. Trump has given an interview earlier tonight in which he says he's going to throw out the speech he intended to give on Thursday night, accepting the nomination, and make it a unity speech. And I think he's gotten some advice or his own instincts to speak more positively and less, not run the country down, not run his opponents down. And I think you saw that from President Biden tonight in his brief speech to the country. They're both saying the same thing. Democratic and Republican congressmen and senators are saying the same thing. This is serious business. When you start ratcheting up the rhetoric, you significantly increase possibility that somebody's going to take a shot at a politician and maybe even a president. So I think for the time being, at least for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a reduction in the polarized rhetoric. Whether that lasts till November, I wouldn't bet my first, second, or third born on that, and I only have two born, so I wouldn't bet their future on that this lasting for the whole campaign. This is a very contested campaign. The people have strong feelings about it. The candidates do, and their supporters do, and it's just hard for me to imagine that between now and the early part of November that it won't ratchet back up. But hopefully a lesson has been learned here.
Zev, thank you so much for your time. Zev Yaroslavsky joining us here on KCAL. Thank you again for your expertise.
My pleasure.
We'll head here in our